I guess our bread and butter is more so the tax auctions. The first thing is, they have motivation right off the bat. And their motivation is the fact they're going to lose their home. And sometimes these guys don't even know. And I kind of love that when I get to call and be the first one and let them know. And even sometimes I'm not going to be the one to buy their home, but like I said, I want to help people out. And if I can help them beat the county, essentially, I'm the one on their side. It's me and you versus the county.
So you said you tripled your income in 2 years. What kind of things did you have to unlearn to grow that fast? Because Ben working back in the restaurants, not living a good life relative to Ben today is a 180-degree turn.
It is, yeah. So you had to go from
flipping eggs in the kitchen to flipping real estate with title issues that most investors run away from.
That's right.
This is a story of what you did in 2 short years to triple your income, walked away from the chaos of the restaurant industry, made major life changes, and closed over a dozen high-stakes, really messy real estate deals that most people would never dare touch. This is a conversation about emotional intelligence, a little bit of hustle, and why tens of thousands of property across the United States, maybe 100,000, are stuck in limbo and need people like you to fix them. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you, Logan. Appreciate you having me on.
No doubt. Ben, you're working in the restaurant business in a kitchen, and now you're closing 6-figure real estate deals. How'd that happen?
Man, so I started working in the kitchen in 2013, and that wasn't even something that I knew I wanted to do. I didn't have a job at the time. I was a bit of a degenerate, you could say. And my uncle called me, and he said, I got a job opportunity out in the Eagle Ford Shale to be a cook in a oil field roughneck camp for a catering company. And then I was like, I don't know about that. And then he said,
I don't know about that.
$1,000 a week. And I said, back then, 2013, I was like, from making nothing to $1,000 a week, let's do it. So I went out there, and almost immediately I found a passion for cooking.
Out of all the things you could enjoy, you show up in there and it happens.
It's such a weird place to find that passion for cooking, right? In a camp, a bunch of roughnecks and
who don't appreciate what it is, and it's not top end.
That's one of the things, dude. Those guys did not appreciate any of that. And the catering company was owned by a chef who owned a pretty popular spot here in San Antonio. He built a catering company and somehow ended up down there. So we're cooking pretty nice things for these guys. Oh. And I'm learning from him and all that. But yeah, the guys, they wanted hot dogs. They wanted chili dogs. They wanted burgers. They wanted pretty simple stuff. So at the time, I was still a bit of a degenerate. So I think that lasted about 3 months. But from there, I really found out that I wanted to continue that path. So I started working in restaurants here in San Antonio. Eventually, I found out that San Antonio was not going to be a place where I could really elevate my career as a chef.
Our culinary scene is not that great.
And back then, it really wasn't anywhere. So I decided to make the move to either New York or L.A.
Oh, the heart of it.
Yeah, the heart of it. And I ended up picking L.A., and I started working for some really great chefs out there.
One of the closest big cities to the Mexican border also.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Did a couple stages out there, which is essentially like a tryout in the restaurant world. You go and work for free for 1 to 2 days. You try it out. You see if you work well with the team. And then they give you the yes or the no at the end of that stage. And I ended up working for a pretty famous chef who I probably won't name just for purposes. Worked in one of his spots. He actually came up in the New York scene, became really popular, was on all the shows. He's got Netflix shows and all that kind of stuff. Worked for him for about 2.5 years. And then, so it was 2019, 2020, and that's when COVID hit. And I start to see the restaurant industry and how fragile it was.
Ooh.
And we got furloughed. So I'm back here for 6 months. And during that time, I realized I had some time to work on myself. Because, like I said, I was a degenerate, but not only a degenerate, I weighed about 315 pounds.
Woo! I've never seen that, Ben, but you've shown me pictures.
Yeah. Maybe we'll put some...
and right after you come to work with us, I think you're on the tail end of all that loss. So
yeah,
it was like,
pretty much.
Whoa.
Yeah. So during that 6 months of being furloughed, I decided I was either gonna go 1 or the other way. And it was either going to be gaining weight, which a lot of people during COVID, they put on 40, 50, 60 pounds, or the other way. And I was going to work on myself. So I lost 100 pounds in 10 months. And I got down
10 pounds a month. That's like a couple pounds a week.
Yeah, dude, I lost it
rapid.
really fast, and I did it all without working out. I did it all through diet, doing the keto thing. And
How different did you feel from month 1 to month 10?
Man, month 1 and month 2 were really difficult because I think, as you know, when you stop eating carbs, your energy levels are just decimated. And they were. And luckily I didn't have a job at the time, so I didn't have to do anything, but I wasn't doing anything. I was laying in bed all day. I was pretty miserable. But once you start seeing that new you in the mirror and you just keep going and
That's
dropping,
addicting in itself.
It's addicting. It is. And I have an addictive personality. So that became somewhat of an addiction to me. And then after that, I was kind of a bag of bones. I got down to like 188, but I didn't have any muscle on me. So I was like, all right. So then that's when I got into the gym, started lifting and doing all that. And since that time, I've really stayed consistent with being in the gym, and I got into jiu-jitsu and doing all kinds of stuff like that just to further my growth when it comes to my physical, you know.
A lot of big life-changing things.
Yeah.
Well, most people avoid like problem properties, title issues, but you've been around wholesaling, you've been around other kinds of real estate, and this. Mm-hmm. Why are these messy real estate deals your favorite?
I'd say it's the challenge, and not only that, but I really enjoy helping people. When it comes to wholesaling, man, it started to kind of get on me about all the deceptive nature of it. And I know there's some wholesalers out there that they're completely transparent, but let's be honest. The majority of these guys, they're lying their way through deals. Mm-hmm. Let's be honest. And eventually I'm like, man, that's not really something I enjoy doing. And it starts to wear on you, or it did for me anyways. So when I came back, because I met you through commercial wholesaling, mm-hmm. we did a few deals and with the Simple Capital stuff. And then I came back with Ryan and we started doing the curative title stuff. And it just every deal is so different. Every experience, every learning curve is going to be something new. And it's exciting, and it's been great.
It's like a rock climber. You've got these skills and tools, but every mountain is so different. You just don't know what's coming.
It is.
So you said you tripled your income in 2 years. What kind of things did you have to unlearn to grow that fast? Because Ben working back in the restaurants, not living a good life relative to Ben today is a 180-degree turn.
It is, yeah. So you had to go from a small but consistent salary to working month to month, not knowing if you're going to get paid that month because you didn't close any deals or dispo any deals or whatever it may be. So it was a different kind of grind. It was being more focused in the office and not having to just kind of to float through your day. You had to really put some work in and focus on different things. And I started learning really how to talk to people, because in the kitchen when you're a chef, you're not talking to the customers. You got a few cooks around you, and you're conversating with them throughout the day, but you're not dealing with strangers, essentially, on a day-to-day basis. So when I first started wholesaling, it was intimidating.
Oh, wow. You're going from working with, half a dozen people in a kitchen to dealing with 20, 30, 40 people new every day.
Absolutely.
I thought of that.
Yeah. So I think I mentioned this, but the first time I got on the phone, I started sweating through my shirt. It was the most intimidating thing ever to just talk to a stranger on the other end of the line and ask them if they want to sell their home to me for 40% under market or whatever it was at the time.
Two things. One of them is a stranger. The other thing is you're asking some really hard questions. A lot of folks that are doing distressed property deals really struggle with the phone conversation. And I see folks that are in this business, they're new or they're learning, they find themselves in this laid up spot where they're researching like crazy and they're doing all this and they're having fun. I'm like, dude, you've been researching for 3 weeks. You haven't made a call. Mm-hmm. You will not earn any money. When you got on, how did you get on the phone the first time? Because I imagine you had the same fear too, or did you just say, forget it, I got to go do this and let's just hope it works?
It took a while because you do get stuck in that paralysis by analysis. But eventually you learn, I don't want to spend more than 3 to 5 minutes on the research I'm doing. First thing I like to do, I want to see the property I'm looking at. I go on Redfin, and I want to look exactly what the asset or what the piece of land that I'm looking at is. And then now, since we're doing the curative title stuff, I'll hop in the land records real quick. I'll get on LandGlide. I want to look at the overview. I want to see what's next to it. I want to see where it is, location. I want to see maybe if there's things being built around it, things like that. But after that, if I get a good number from a skip, I'm calling them immediately. Quick. Yeah.
It's so different from up front, sweating through your shirt just to make that call. And now you're like, you know why you're calling. You got a plan. Let's see if this chess match can work.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's all, I was thinking about it the other day. It's like, what mask am I going to put on with this specific seller? What
does that mean?
Am I going to put on the cordial, empathetic mask, or am I going to put on the mask where I'm like matching their energy? Or am I going to be a little more straightforward, straight shooter with them? I really kind of figure that out in the first 10 to 15 seconds. I want to figure out who I'm talking to and what mask I need to put on.
I see. That directs pretty much where you're headed, how you're going to do it.
Exactly. Yeah, because everyone's different, like I said.
Ben, you said 2023 changed everything for you. What happened?
Yeah, so the end of 2023, I was still doing the commercial wholesaling with you guys, and I got my biggest deal, and it was a 16-unit apartment complex in McAllen, Texas, down in the valley. And when we closed it, I think we made as a company $168,000, and I ended up with a $31,500 check.
It's a good check.
Now, that right there is a cook's salary here in San Antonio for a whole year. So that really opened my eyes to what could happen in the real estate industry and what's possible. So that really changed the whole game for me right there.
It is true. It can happen. It might not happen every month, but it can happen. It can happen a couple times a year, and then there's a bunch of mid-sized ones along the way. Whoa.
Exactly.
Like this is major.
Yeah, because before that, I think I had some $11,000 months, $15,000 months, and then the $30K. And I see it hit my bank account. And we were at a club for our Christmas party.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this is insane. This is a whole year's salary.
That's like a big lift right there. You got to feel like on top of the world because it's a proof of concept. It's I'm good enough to make this happen. I hear about all these other people doing it, but I'm actually good enough. And this check proves it to me.
Exactly. You know what? And I was listening to you and Chris Berry's podcast, and he was talking about imposter syndrome. And I deal with that as well. So that little thing, or it wasn't little, but that check right there really started to chip away at that imposter syndrome. And I still deal with it to these days. Like
a lot of people do, man.
Yeah. And, the beginning of this year, January, I think I got 6 deals real quick. First month, boom, 3 the next month. And I'm like, can I actually keep this up? Can I keep repeating this process? Am I that good? Can I keep this up? And, it's something I guess we all deal with at some time or another.
I feel like over time it goes away, but many years of positive things happening in business chipped away at it for me. And at this point, 10 years in, I feel really good that it's real and that is who I am and all that. But I still feel like for me, it took a long time as well.
Sure. Yeah.
Am I one hit wonder? Did I just get lucky and hit 2 base hits in a row?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's the thing. I'm like, is this just all luck right now?
But see, I think that comes from like insecurities probably as a kid, maybe things that happened when you grew up, parental stuff, all these environmental things, maybe some genetic, hereditary stuff upstairs. All this stuff happens. And as an adult, if you're lucky, you can figure out how to dig your way out of it.
Definitely.
Some people don't.
Yeah. Because as a child and adolescent and in my 20s, I could never see myself doing what I'm doing now. This was, where I'm sitting now, that old Ben, he never could have dreamed of this.
Oh, man, that's right. So if you were to look at like what a typical day looks like, you're spending most of your time in acquisitions and some time in like cleanup, curative, trying to figure out how to solve some of these problems. Yeah. And that is a bottleneck in these businesses. Once we get good at acquiring, we can acquire a lot. But if you're managing a business, unless you're a billionaire, your capital is still somewhat limited. So while you might have millions of dollars to spend, buying and trading and whatever property, you still have a point where you say, oh my gosh, I got 10, 12, 13, 14 deals. Oh crap. We got to clean these up and sell them so I can get paid so the company can have some money to continue to operate. So you can have to slow down and kind of fix. But what's your typical day look like?
So it has changed a little bit just with the way the market is right now. But let's say in the beginning of the year, I'd come in, and the first thing I'm doing is I'm looking for new lists, because with me and Ryan, I guess our bread and butter is more so the tax auctions. So I'm going and I'm checking every single.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
How
go for
much
it.
different are those sellers for a tax auction as opposed to a 10-unit apartment complex used to call on?
Well, the first thing is, they have motivation right off the bat. And their motivation is the fact they're going to lose their home. And sometimes these guys don't even know. And I kind of love that when I get to call and be the first one and let them know. And even sometimes I'm not going to be the one to buy their home, but like I said, I want to help people out. And if I can help them beat the county, essentially, I'm the one on their side. It's me and you versus the county. And I've had so many instances where I'm not the one buying the home, but they go and contact the county, and they're about to lose their home in 2 or 3 days, and they go pay it off because they had the capital to go pay it off.
That's crazy.
But they hadn't got the disclosure or whatever it is that.
Wow.
Yeah, because a lot of these guys, I think it was what county was it? I can't remember, but there was a few lake houses, and they weren't even living in the houses, and they were about, I think it was 2 or 3 days away from the auction. And man, those guys were like, if you're ever in da-da-da county, we need to go out for a beer because you saved my ass,
Oh, wow. You can just send me $5,000 about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, sorry to derail you, but let's go back to what a typical day looks like.
Sure.
Sorry.
Yeah. So first thing, I'm looking at lists, and then I'm gonna start cherry picking too, because there's a lot of these auctions where there's a bunch of lots where they owe 15 and it's worth 30, and that just isn't worth the squeeze right now for us, So I'm going to cherry pick, and then I'm going to start skip tracing, and I'm going to go from the most advantageous deal down the line. And what that looks like is I'm going to look at as-is value, and then I'm going to look at what they owe, and then I might go in and do a little research as to, is that market moving right now? Are there houses being sold, et cetera, et cetera? And then I'm going to
for demand.
Exactly.
Now, I want to go insane. People always talk about, when I say, what's the value? They say, the ARV, and I want to throw up because I literally hear it. Why is it that you're not looking at ARV?
We're not looking at ARV because we're not going to be doing any kind of fixing on these houses. I don't think we have one deal that we put in carpet, a roof, and paint. And I think that was the only deal out of the last 18 that me and Ryan have done where we've done anything besides clean them out. So yeah, you see a lot of these guys that will try to bring us JV deals, and they're like, oh, ARVs, this and that. I'm like, but what is it worth right now on the market?
Isn't it shocking how much that throws them for a loop? They say, well, what do you mean? I'm like, if you were listed on the market, what would it sell for? Oh, well, I'm like, look at the comps, and people get roadblocked.
It is
in their mind just because there's not other. It's not perfect, so they're done. They can't figure it out.
I think it's almost like an outlandish thing for a lot of the wholesalers because they've learned how to evaluate based on ARV, and you have to be able to pivot and learn what it's worth as is. And it's a little different, but it's not the most difficult thing in the world to find out.
Right, I agree with that.
Yeah. So the rest of my day, I guess it'd be new leads at first. I would start my morning off with new leads because when it comes to our business, the amount of guys who are doing it now is growing. I wouldn't say it's anything near what the wholesale market is like when it comes to the people calling them, but the first thing I'm going to do is call new leads. And then after that, I'm going to follow up with other leads. And then if Ryan needs me to get, purchase agreements out, closing packets ready to go through our admin, scheduling notaries, things of that nature.
Just some of the closing process.
Yeah. There's so many different moving parts about this because we're going from closing it ourselves to then listing it and closing with a buyer. So it's a little different.
Yeah, that's a different spectrum than like someone who's just wholesaling. They're kind of getting a contract, seeing someone buy the contract. In this case, you guys are like getting closing documents ready, sending out a wire, collecting a deed and recording it. Like that's the stuff that the title companies a lot of times do. And in y'all's case, that's what y'all are doing.
It's definitely different.
That's a lot different than wholesaling a 10-plex.
Yeah. And a lot of people, they rely on the title company so much and we're the ones doing all that abstract of title and we're the ones doing all that back end work to make sure we're safe and we're doing everything legally and we're doing everything the right way. And then after that, it's the getting it ready for market. So we get a photographer out there, we get a cleanup crew out there, list it, and then.
How are you guys deciding what it is you should do before it goes to market? Condition-wise.
We'll look around in that area. That's one of the things I'm pretty good at, is looking and seeing, do I even want to go after this? Yeah, it looks like a good deal, but is it going to sell in 30 days, or is it going to sit on the market for 6 months? I'm going to go see what other properties are selling like out there. Are they selling as is, or are people fixing them up? And then that's just going to dictate price at the end of the day. And with us, we're always listing 10 to 15% under the market. And with the way the market is right now, we've kind of had to decrease from that a little bit. But, we get in at such a low cost that we're still making money on the other end.
A lot of people that are looking at the ARV and trying to figure that out are completely missing just what's it sell for. If you put it on the listing service right now, and then just like they'd pitch a wholesale deal. If it's not quite going to be accepted at that price, well, you got to be able to really lower the price quickly and in a meaningful way, because every day that thing's sitting on MLS, it's not cash in your account. It's not ready to do the next deal. It's so many things that it's not.
Exactly. And I'd rather, sell it to someone for an even smaller price tag and be able to recycle that money back.
Move it.
There's more deals to be had. There's always more deals.
I think a lot of people that don't understand that there's a never-ending flow of deals and have figured out how to get to them, those are the ones that always seem to fight for some imaginary number that they have anchored up here.
Yeah.
They continue to try to stay up there. And the rest of the world, the market hasn't spoken that way. The buyers think something different.
Yeah.
They're in their own way.
Exactly. And the market is going to dictate your price at the end of the day. And
Yeah, I tell people that. I say, you know what? You don't pick the price, and neither do I. The market does
Exactly.
that. But we've got to come up with what to list it for. You're right. But if we're too damn far off the market, won't even talk to us. It'll just get real quiet. And that also means something. People have a hard time understanding the market's talking those ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you have to be able to pivot, like I said, especially right now, where at the beginning of the year, it was a pretty even buyer-seller market. Right now, it's a buyer's market, 100%.
That price line.
Yeah.
That's part of why I think this model does so much better than traditional flippers or wholesalers, because they don't have the ability to slash that price if you have to. We've got one of them up. God, I think it's around it's around the Austin area, I'm thinking. It's a commercial tract. The price keeps getting less and less. It's somewhere in the high fours right now. And I think we were thinking it was like maybe sixes or something like that.
Is this the one that me and Ryan have, that 9 acres?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Y'all are in the high fours, is that right?
Yeah, and we had a local broker kind of give us a what's it called, a BPO on that. Mm-hmm. And they were giving us the price per acre with it being commercial and everything like that. And we got it at such a low price. We still have, I think, a $300K difference in between our listing and our acquisitions price. So we have plenty of room to keep moving down.
Even if you slash another $100,000.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about that today. I was like, wonder what people think when they see us slashing prices, 100K, 50K. I don't know if they're seeing desperation, if they're like, wow, these guys are in at such a low price that they can
Bill
do
and
that.
I would kind of go back and forth about that. He goes, well, we look desperate. And I said, I don't really give a shit how it looks. We're trying to find the buyer that's willing to accept it quickly. And until we get in their category, we're not going to move it. And I don't really care if they think we look desperate. We don't have to accept a low ball. If we get it down low and they think we're desperate, we don't have to accept a low ball. Make us look desperate. Give me a freaking offer so I can try to work on it.
Exactly.
But I don't care if I look desperate or not. If I ain't got no offer, I got no conversion of cash.
Yeah, that desperation thing is almost like a little decoy. Like, oh yeah, we look like the weak seller. What you don't know is on the back end, we're still going to make $150,000 on this thing.
That's what people are shocked. These realtors used to talk like kind of disrespectful and snarky to my wife. She works for Home Team, which is not a really big, well-named brokerage. And if you look her up, she's selling all these sub $200,000 properties. Mm-hmm. But what they don't realize is we bought them for $30,000.
Exactly.
Like, we'll make as much on that as most people make on a $1 million flip.
Exactly.
Surprise.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the big skills you've got is being able to acquire property from the right person at the right price. Can you tell me about what the conversation sounds like when you're talking to that seller? Kind of walk me through what one of those calls is like. How are you starting? What's the evolution of that call look like?
So it is different on a case-to-case basis, but one that kind of rings a bell in my head is a lady. I won't say her last name, but it was Miss Dorothy. And this lead was sitting in my CRM because, like I mentioned, we're going typically for the leads that have a pretty high delinquent tax base to them. You know, they're 40, 50 behind. And this one only had $8K in delinquent taxes. So I kind of sat there for a while, and Ryan was like, why didn't you call this one? And I was like, well, look, it might be worth 100, 120. And she only owes 8. She'll probably pay it off. He goes, no, give her a call. So I think I finally got a hold of her. And this elderly lady, man, I kind of let her spill her entire life story out in about an hour conversation. Because at first she was very standoffish, and she was like, what the hell? You know, who the hell are you? Why are you even calling me? Da, 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 da. And somehow we got to the topic of, look, just how'd you get in this situation? Like, let me try to help you through this. So she gave me her whole life story, and I won't mention some of the things this lady went through, but wow, like a difficult, traumatic life, to say the least. And that one,
She really must have opened up. You called her and she was defensive, and she went from being defensive to willing to talk.
You know what?
Talk.
Yeah,
a lot of disclosure.
If you're willing to lend an ear to some of these elderly people who are alone, they don't really get to talk to people on a daily basis. And if you just sit there and become another person on the end of the phone and not a sales guy, you're able to relate with them and listen, which is the most important thing. Like, just stop and listen. You can really make some headway with some of these sellers. And like I said, I like to help people too. So it's not all just making money at the end of the day. It was a really great opportunity to help this lady out. You actually walked this house too. I don't know if you remember that one. It's the one with the dead cat in the garage back in Arlington. Yeah.
Yeah. That cat was like melted in the ground.
It was mummified. Yeah, that was a pretty interesting one.
What kind of things did you have to say to get her to start to open up? Because defensiveness is really hard to disarm.
You know, I don't remember particularly what I said, but I think it was me kind of lowering my voice and being a little more slow in my cadence. And like I said, lending her an ear. And I think I point blank asked her to tell me, like, how did you get to this spot in your life? And she wasn't even living in the house. She was actually in Mississippi, and this thing was in Arlington.
She abandoned it.
Well, yeah. And what happened was her daughter, who was a crack user, turned it into somewhat of a crack den. So she didn't even really know what was going on because she's all the way in Mississippi. And they trashed this place, and she got it, I think, gift deeded over to her by a elderly couple who she was like a nurse essentially for people in hospice.
Oh, that's right, that caretaker
Situation, exactly. So she got this house given to her pretty much for free, and she explained that whole thing to me. And one of her main points of contention was trust, right? So I really had to build that. And that took place over about 2 or 3 phone calls, each about an hour in length.
Oh my gosh, you put in real time.
Yeah. So our contract, I think it has 22, maybe 23 different lines on it. And we went over it line by line by line. And some of this attorney talk, even I'm like, I'm having to ask Ryan, like, hey, what does this exactly mean? Because she's asking me. So we did that. And the funny thing is, so our second call was going to be the signing call. So we went over the contract. Her phone dies right as I'm explaining DocuSign. And for the next hour, her phone's dead. And I'm like, oh my God.
You're like third call in, an hour each, right? Like the climax, and bang.
Yep. So then she calls back and she goes, Ben, for a second, I thought that might be a sign from God.
Oh,
that I shouldn't be sided with you. And we actually shared that a little bit because I'm a follower of Christ and things like that. So I brought her back into the circle of trust, essentially. We got her to sign. And her last point of contention is she didn't trust wires. She didn't want this $50,000 that we offered her transferred by wire. So she wanted a physical check hand delivered to her in backwoods Mississippi. So that's when we get into the whole, Ryan's like, you ready to take a trip?
Have you ever been to Mississippi?
Yeah. Have you been to Mississippi, Ben? I'm like, no. He's like, well, will you go? And I'm like, I don't want to.
This is an interesting story about a career. That time where you got on a plane and personally delivered a $50,000 check to backwoods Mississippi.
Exactly. Yeah. And
was it an overnight stay or there and back?
Well, it turned out to be even more screwed up than what it seemed like from the beginning, because my plan was San Antonio to Atlanta to Memphis, drive down. I think I was going to land in Memphis around midnight, drive down into Mississippi, stay in a hotel overnight. We're going to close the next day at a Walmart in Backwoods, Mississippi. Well, I get to San Antonio airport and my flight gets delayed. So I miss. So essentially, even if I fly to Atlanta, I'm going to get there late and I'm going to miss my connecting flight to Memphis. So I call Ryan. And Ryan's like, "Well, what are we going to do?" And I'm like, I want to get this done. I'm going to get it done, whatever it takes.
Put me in the car. Fuck it. Let's go.
Put me in the car. We get a rental from Atlanta, and I drive overnight through Alabama. What's the other? I don't even know what the other state is. Georgia, into Alabama, into Mississippi. I started seeing, I don't know, the lines were getting crossed. It's 3 a.m. in the morning, backwoods, dark roads. And I'm like, I got to stop. So I stop at a hotel somewhere. I don't know. I think it was out of Tuskegee or something like that. And sleep for an hour and a half, get up, get back on the road, make it to this Walmart. I'm like, I'm making it there at 10 a.m., dude. I'm not missing this. Get there, 10 a.m., got a notary lined up, local notary. She meets us over there, parking lot. We're signing docs in the back of a rental car that I got from Hertz Rental Car in Atlanta.
People wonder why deals like this are hard to do. And they wonder, why don't you use a title company? It's not because we can't always use title companies. This lady would have never done a virtual closing through a normal title company or driven to the city. Hell, you had to meet her at Walmart down the street from her house at some random time in a different city.
Yeah.
Like would never transact.
It wasn't an
normally.
option. Yeah,
Ever.
exactly. So we do that. And then she wants me to walk into her local bank, which is at the Walmart, to deposit this check and see if it's legit. Because the whole time she's just got trust issues, which I understand. She's been through so many things.
You flew here from the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
and I'm trying to tell her that.
Met her face to face.
Met her face to face. She's in a little electric wheelchair thing.
Oh my gosh.
But she turned out to be great. She was hilarious. She's calling me her boyfriend as we're going. She knows all the people in the bank. She's like a 60, 70-year-old lady. This is my new boyfriend, Ben. He's from San Antonio.
He just brought me 50 grand.
Yeah. And she's like, shh, don't let people know how much money I'm getting. You could get shot around here for that and all this kind of stuff. And she's like, I don't know. That was an experience for sure. But it just shows what it takes to get some of these deals done sometimes.
We don't talk about these stories enough. I need to start talking about these kind of stories because these are the hairy things that 90% of the time we're in the office, at the desk, using the phone, taking a lunch somewhere around noon, like a very standard day. But there's a lot more of this happening than people realize.
Yeah, it's funny because we don't typically walk any of these houses. But if I need to go fly out to another state to close, let's do it.
I remember flying to Vegas for our honeymoon. There was a lady who I'd been trying to work with forever, and she went cold on me. So I took $10,000, and on me and my wife's honeymoon, we went to the U-Haul place where her daughter worked to go in and try to talk to her. That lady was such a wreck. She told me, get the hell out, talking all this shit. And then finally, I just pulled the 10 grand out. I'm like, there are customers in there. She's like the manager. I'm like, I brought this money for you. It's real money. And she's like, out. I'm like, is this happening?
So how'd that turn out in the end?
Dude, that was probably one of the most wildest, ironic, weird deals. I almost bought that property from the wrong person. The way the title chain worked out, we found the owners. Well, the owner died, and there were a couple. These were children. So we called to buy from the children, but I can't remember exactly why. But it was literally the wrong name. I mean, it was the same name, but different people. Like it was the wrong, Logan Fullmer or whatever. And these people get on the phone, they're acting normal, we're telling them about it, they seem to know about it. I don't know how the hell this happened. Title company got involved, like we were gonna close that way. Right at the end, we found out it was the wrong ones. So we ended up having, that's what it was. It wasn't that name. They had a life estate. They didn't actually have ownership, they had the life estate. The person that owned it lived in Vegas. And I'd been calling this lady, couldn't get any attention, finally started to get attention. It was a very similar trust issue too. I was sending her like our Secretary of State registration, all this proof. She just kept blowing me off. And I was like, whatever, lady. I get a call from a realtor. Oh, and then I see it pop up on the tax sale list. And I'm like, I knew this was coming.
Yep.
I get a call from a local realtor that says, hey, Logan, I'm calling you about a property. And he goes, it's going to sale on like Tuesday in 3 weeks. And something just told me, because there weren't a lot of sales happening that month. And I was like, you're talking about Burnett Street for $53,000? You must be talking to Miss Allie Mae. And he was like, thought I was a fucking ghost.
Yeah, right.
But it all worked out anyway. When it was time to sell or the foreclosure was going to happen, she Google searched, she got noticed, Google searched realtor in San Antonio, called a realtor I had a relationship with.
Wow.
And he just called me. He goes, I know you do more of this default work than anybody. He said, what do you want to do? And I was like, you're going to laugh. I got to file this thick of that deal. It is complicated and messy, but I have it solved.
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
So you tell her to play ball. Don't try to list it because you're not going to have time. Offer her $50,000. Offer her $50,000. There's $15,000 above the $35,000 owed in taxes. We paid her. We closed with title insurance. And then me and him went to market, sold it for like $150, split the profit in the middle, 50-50.
Nice.
That was very similar to this wacky deal. That was one at the top.
These sellers with trust issues, as many attorney demand letters as you send them and professional statements and all that, it doesn't matter to them. Sometimes you got to get face to face with them and show them you're a real person. And that's just how.
And that's about them and their problems and their whole life. It has nothing to do with you. I remember at one point trying to figure out, how do I prove to them that I'm like good enough for what I say I am? That ain't me.
It doesn't even matter.
And the thing is, I was more credible than that realtor. He was a solid dude, knew what he was doing, but I was just more experienced and probably better at this. She Google searched. He had a realtor license. She trusted him over me.
Yeah, that word realtor trademarked has more credibility than
that drove me insane.
Exactly.
So, is there a sales process that you're using when you call these folks, or do you sort of feel through it naturally?
I really don't have a sales process. I'm doing it all by the seat of my pants, man. Like I said, it all depends on how I feel this person out.
Do you have an offer already before you call them?
If I've done enough research and seen how many owners there are, and it's going to depend on if there's one owner or 5 or 7. But yeah, typically I already got a number in my head that I'm going to work around. And sometimes I'll be willing to come up maybe a little bit off of that number, but I'm going to stick with like a median price.
Pretty
close. If I need to come up because they're not going to agree to that, or if I need to come down because I find out we have more problems to get through, then yeah.
How are you kind of coming to that number? Like, what's your formula?
As I evaluate, it goes back to location, and then it goes back to how that market in that county is doing, and it goes to the condition as I'm seeing it from the curb, because I don't know what the inside of this house looks like. So I'm always thinking about the worst. I'm thinking about what is it called? The people who collect everything in their homes.
The hoarder.
Hoarder house, yes. A hoarder house, squatter house, spray paint, holes in the roof, et cetera, et cetera. I'm thinking of the worst when I look at these homes. And then if they can give me a little bit of proof, maybe some pictures or some kind of a word that they've done some kind of repairs or anything like that, then I might come off that median price or that lower price that I've come up with.
Yeah, let's just say the property is $200,000 in the appraisal district, and they owe $25,000 in taxes. And you look at it, and it looks like it's in decent condition, but the yard is taller than the neighbors, and the house probably hasn't been updated quite so as frequently as the ones around it. How do you come up? And let's say there's 3 owners. How do you come up with that?
So if it's 200 CAD, then Redfin's probably going to be around 235, 230, something like that, which means it's going to be essentially, if you look at Redfin and look at that number, that's ARV right there for the most part.
If it's in good shape.
If it's in good shape. If it's because they're going off of averages on flipped homes, on new builds sometimes, things like that. And that's what you got to explain to some of these sellers sometimes. Like, you're looking at that Redfin or that Zillow number, but that's based off of averages on fixed up homes, and your home is not in that condition. So if it's worth 235 fixed up, it's got a 200 CAD, they owe 25, and we got 3 heirs, and that's as far as it's going to go. I don't have any other liens or judgments or difficulties to get through. Then as is probably going to be, let's say, anywhere between 130, 150, something like that.
Maybe you spend $5,000 hauling some trash out, trimming the trees in the yard, and just dump it on MLS. That's your number.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's go with 130, and they owe 25. So, and we got 3 heirs. Let's be all in. If I want to make 50 to 75, let's be all in at 20 to them. So we're all in at 45, somewhere under 50 and under, something like that.
That's a safe number. And if you made a mistake and there's concrete in the drains that you don't know about it, you got room. If you just there are times where we bought a drainage ditch one time. It was these lots in Canyon Lake, and it was a house to house and then a lot between it. We didn't see there was a drainage pipe in the road that led to this lot, and it wasn't like like a drainage easement, but it was a freaking low drainage. Like literally, you couldn't even get a driveway there. I don't know how the hell we bought that thing. But unless you like really bomb the deal somehow like that, I mean, you got enough room to fix any problem. You got enough room to lower the price down all the way as far as you need. Exactly. You're very safe.
Yeah. Even if we can only make 20 because we found out there's holes in the roof and the foundation is totally screwed and there's this and there's that, we're still at a safe margin,
Yeah. A lot of people look at this and they're really concerned about the upside. But one of the things I think you learned working with Ryan over any of the other work you've done in the past is you're looking at all the downside too. What other things could go wrong? Can we find extra owners we didn't know about later? Is there a surprise attorney general lien or mechanics lien or something? Can we have all these problems go wrong and still be protected where we're not really going to lose any money?
Exactly.
And if you've got room for all that stuff to go wrong and you don't lose money, well, then you take that risk. And if all those things don't go wrong, you got a good margin.
And that's what comes with the experience in this and going deal by deal by deal and seeing all these different incidences and all these different problems that can arise. And that's where you're going to be able to make those evaluations a lot better.
Get better and better.
Exactly.
I think your background in the wholesaling from the residential stuff and into the commercial, I think that background probably prepped you very well for this.
Definitely.
Because I remember talking with Ryan about it, and I remember thinking in my head, like, I have a feeling Ben's going to be up to speed really quickly on this, and that's how it worked.
Yeah. So it was a bit of a learning curve. I think, I started September 24, and I don't think I got any deals the first 2 months because I was still learning how to navigate land records, which is such an important aspect of this game.
Yeah.
And most people don't even know that's there. They're like, oh, we went to CAD and it's worth this, and these are the owners. Well, those probably aren't the owners. They could be the owners. Yeah. But you might not have the owners right there, and that CAD number really doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah.
So you need to go look in the land records, you need to do deed search, and you need to see if there's any liens and this and that. And so navigating that from county to county was definitely a learning curve. Mm-hmm. But I think after the first 2 months, the last 3 months of the year, I got a deal per month. Boom, boom, boom. I'm starting to learn more. I'm starting to see this. I'm starting to open my eyes to the different possibilities and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, beyond that, let's see, when it comes to the learning curve, I think learning how to navigate the affidavit of heirships is super important. Being able to utilize different resources too, like we have with the bakers, with our attorneys, things like that. Yeah. There's always an out to most of these problems we see. So
I think a lot of folks who are newer in this business don't realize that, and they get to a point where they don't know what to do, and they say, well, I don't know what to do. And in the past, we figured out how to solve them internally, but as we've grown and gotten better, we say, okay, this has gotten to a point where, all right, call a lawyer. Okay, call private investigators.
Exactly.
And get them on this, and I'm going to get back to rolling on my process.
And that's the great thing about having these huge margins is we can go and hire those private investigators, those attorneys to get things done, pay them $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, and we're still in the money.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Wholesale and the traditional flip deal don't have that.
No, they don't.
When I got to San Antonio, there was several houses I flipped, and I thought that's where I was headed. And I'll never forget, there was this house right behind my apartment complex. I lived at Sunset Ridge. There's a house back on like Vander Heck, I think was the street maybe, about a block behind my apartment complex. And it was beat up, and I could see boxes in the windows. And I remember knocking on this door. No one would answer. And I started asking the neighbors, where is this guy? And they said, I think he's getting in some like assisted living in Austin or something. Mm-hmm. I didn't have the resources. I didn't know it. I didn't know at the time. But I remember Googling and doing a little searching and calling. I really couldn't get very far, so I forgot about it. Well, then months and months later, I drive by and I see someone like doing hauling the trash out and all this stuff. And I'm thinking, oh man, it happened. About a year later, I was talking to an investor who did the flip, and he started telling me who he bought it from. And I was like, oh, I know that guy. Well, I think the dude bought it, or I think the dude sold it for like 150 grand to the flipper. And I remember thinking, oh, wow, he got a good deal. Dude, I will never forget the day I was talking to that person, and they told me they paid $50,000 for it. I'm over here flipping a house, borrowing hundreds of thousands of dollars to make 30, 40 grand.
Exactly.
They bought it for 50 and sold it for 150, and they didn't even trash it out. I'm like, hold on. They got on the phone, found this dude, cut a deal, bought it, and resold the dead gum thing in almost no time and made 100 grand.
Exactly. How'd you do that?
What in the
What's your
hell?
secret?
And at that time, I was still like busy flipping this house, and I didn't go get that. I didn't go figure it out yet. But I'll never forget. That was like, I'm looking at them thinking, dude, y'all are the smartest people in this whole process. Well, several years later, we arrived there and didn't know it, but I'm thinking they're smarter than the contractors, the flippers, the wholesalers. They're smarter than everybody.
Exactly. Yeah. You get to stop playing that GC role, that's a hard role to play. And if you don't know the game well, you can get screwed real quick. You see it happen all the time. So,
Yeah, you're exactly right.
It definitely changes the game when you can leave all that stuff off to the side and just deal directly with a seller, buy it, flip it onto the market, and recycle that.
Something I think a lot of people miss is the risk part of the contracting and the time part. If you buy something and maybe haul some trash out and trim the grass and throw it on the market, you're not putting a lot of hours or time or additional dollars into it. But if you've got to buy it, remodel, spend 20, 30, 50, 90,000, manage these contractors, show up, pick out home, toilets and paint at Home Depot and all this stuff. You got 90 days into this, another big chunk of dollars. The profitability actually is far less. Even if the dollars are more sometimes, when you look at your dollar per hour, it's exponential when it comes to buying with distress and reselling than it does to flipping.
Yeah, it chews up your time, and as we know,
That's what kills your dollar per hour right
exactly.
there.
Chews up your time, and what do we got? 70, maybe 80 years on this earth, chewing up time like that.
It's valuable time.
It's costly. It's costly.
How many
sure.
hours would you guess you have per deal?
Oh, man.
From the time you get someone on the phone until the time like it's sold and you're getting paid.
I think our average conversion cycle is probably, I'd have to put it in days, not hours, because I'm not good at math. But I think we're typically doing about 3 months. Something
Okay,
like
so
that.
90 days.
So from the first call to that buyer closing off the market, about 90 days, I think, is average. But we've done them a lot quicker than that. We did them in 30 days as well.
You're probably, let's see here, if you do 30 divided by 90 is...
I'm trying to think what our quickest deal was. Our quickest deal was probably about 28 days, 30 days, something like that. And that was a one-call close, too.
Okay, so if you're doing it in 90 days, that's 3, 6, 9, 12, about 12 weeks. So 12 weeks times 3 hours a week, that could be 35, 36 hours.
Sure, yeah.
You might have 30 hours in a deal over 3 months. You work 2-3 hours a week on it, and then you move to something else.
Something like that. That sounds about right, yeah.
So when you think about that, 2-3 hours a week per deal, as opposed to flipping a house, 2-3 hours a week is one trip to Home Depot.
Exactly.
And you haven't even met the contractor.
Exactly.
You haven't even picked up the paint yet. You haven't even
and
man.
they didn't screw up yet either, and you didn't have to get a new contractor, and they didn't run off.
You haven't fired any
They didn't run
contractors
off with
here.
your money or whatever. You're not
And
still,
you don't even get to go to JP Court for the contractor yet.
and you're still waiting on a permit from the city and all that stuff too. So yeah.
Let's go back to the 25-year-old Ben 10 years ago.
Oof.
What is 30?
Do you want to?
What does 35-year-old Ben need to tell the 25-year-old Ben? What does 25-year-old Ben need to hear?
The most straightforward and simple thing I would tell him is save money, and also stop using drugs. But man,
These like parental things.
if I got
Stop spending your money. Quit doing drugs.
and that wouldn't have worked with 25-year-old Ben. He's not going to listen to that. I think my parents were probably telling me the same thing. But if I had to get like philosophical with it, I would tell him there's so much more out there to be had, and It would be difficult though, because when I was 25, I wanted to own my own restaurant and I didn't know what that looked like yet. And I thought that was going to be my life.
Wow.
And then eventually I start seeing what it takes to run a restaurant and the likelihood that they succeed, and which is very slim to none. You know, most of them I think close within the first, I don't know what the exact numbers are, but I think it's the first year or 5 years or whatever it may be. And I started to see the stress and what it took and the money and all that. And yeah, that's when I started, funny enough, started watching Bigger Pockets podcast in the morning before my shift at the restaurant. And I started doing research. I'd spend like 1 to 2 hours in the morning writing things down. I wanted to become the rental guy. I wanted to own rentals.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think a lot of people
Everybody listens to Bigger Podcast on the way into real estate.
It is. Yeah, it was a great little tool to have. And that I'd say that it was a catalyst in my life, watching that and COVID. Bigger Pockets and COVID were the catalysts in my life. Yeah. But if I don't know, if I had to go back and tell him, I don't think 25-year-old Ben would have listened to anything I had to say.
No, 10 years ago, Logan wouldn't either. But it's fun to think about how much has changed in 10 years. And you ask yourself, what did that guy need to hear? You know, for me, it's everything's going to be okay. Keep doing what you're doing. It's perfect. It's just right. You don't have to worry about anything, although you feel like you do. You don't. You really don't. And then on the other side of that is, what about in 10 years? Where do you think that guy's going to be? If you've been able to make this kind of progress in 10, imagine how much better it gets.
Yeah, and you know, I'll go ahead and agree with you what you said. Of just telling 25-year-old Ben everything's going to be okay, because I don't think I thought anything was going to be okay back then. I was in such a rough place. But man, in 10 years, I would love to maybe be in a position like Ryan. Although, you know, I had my own company for a little bit, and it didn't work out so well, and I didn't find myself fitting into that entrepreneur role so well. And one of my favorite guys out there, Andy Frisella, who's the owner of First Form Energy, he's got the Real AF podcast. He started talking about this term, intrapreneur, and I had never heard it before. You always heard entrepreneur, but what's an intrapreneur? And he explained it as you essentially go into an already laid out business, somebody that has a foundation, and you become a valuable member of that team. You're working within an entrepreneur's business, and you become, you know, like I said, a valuable player on that team, to where you're not the one running the day-to-day operations and things like that. You're not doing the accounting. You're not doing this. You're not taking all that pressure that an entrepreneur has. But in a sales position, you're still able to make a pretty decent living. You're still able to, you know, add value to that company and become a crucial role within that company instead of taking on that head role. And once I heard that, I was like, man, that's me. I'm an intrapreneur, not an entrepreneur.
A lot of different personalities, a lot of different things what people want. And it's interesting. We can watch TV and the social media and all that and think about all these things that other people have. But sometimes when we sit down and ask ourselves, like, what is it that we want to get out of this? Do we want what this guy says you want, or what is it that I really need to make myself happy? And it's not always exactly what we thought it would have been if we really get honest about ourselves. And it requires a big mix of everything. So
yeah, exactly. You know, everybody wants the Lambos and the mansions and this and that really, those dreams started to fall away eventually. And
as you mature, you realize those don't make you happy.
People, you know, they think they want to be an entrepreneur, but when you see what it takes to be an entrepreneur, and the hours and the time away from your family and this and that and the stress, I decided that I didn't want that in my life anymore.
I completely understand it. There are a lot of times where I'm like, why did I sign up for this?
Yeah. So, you know, I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to work with you and Ryan and Bill and everybody, and be able to become an entrepreneur in y'all's company.
We're appreciative of that too.
You know.
There's so much things that we've got to get done across this place. And in the early days, I thought I was the most valuable part and blah, blah, blah. And that was immaturity and that was inexperience. But as I've started to understand what an operation looks like more, I look across and say, holy fuck, man, if I was the only idiot here, this wouldn't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it helped me understand I'm not the most important person. I can be the glue that holds all this together. But, dude, without all these hands, this ain't happening.
Yeah,
man.
I mean, we got the A team in here, and everybody has their different roles, but they do it so well.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I'm hoping soon we can get information about who are the people that are watching this. We're going to start sending out surveys, stuff to understand what our audience is. But I believe there are a lot of people that are on the fringes of real estate that are interested and headed this direction. Probably some people that are hardcore in it. But what kind of advice do you have for the semi-newbies that are looking at this saying, is that for me? Should I get involved in that stuff?
Yeah, I was thinking of that before we actually started this because I was like, I'm not your typical guest on this podcast. I'm not an operator. I don't own my own company. I'm within the company, and I'm the acquisitions guy essentially. So to the new guys out there who maybe aren't looking to hop in and build a company, and they're just looking to step into the door, man, the number one thing is being able to become good on the phones. And that takes reps. I've got my 10,000 reps when it comes to being on the phone. I've made my 10,000 dials plus. And it sucks at first. Like I said, dude, it was awful. Sweating through a shirt on my first phone call really laid it out for me like, man, this is going to be hard. And you got to go and do it again and again, week after week, list after list. But as you get through those reps and you learn how to talk to people on the phone, I mean, I would call the Queen of England, well, she's passed away, but I would call the King of England today and ask him if he wants to sell his castle out there. That's how confident I'm on the phones now. I don't care. Like, I'll go call anyone. And that came from rep after rep after rep, getting screamed at, yelled at, called names, going through so many different personal situations and stories and learning people's cadences and learning how to really direct what I was trying to get across on the phone in different ways and things like that. So that's what I would say is just pick up the phone and dial. Pick up the phone and dial.
Do it.
Yeah. And I see that a lot with some of these guys that are getting into it. They get that paralysis by analysis thing, and they've got all the operational stuff and they've run businesses, but then they want to go and put the phone calls off to a VA, or they get stuck. And I'm just like, just call, man. What's the worst that can happen?
They're going to tell you no, but you don't own that property anyway now, so who really cares?
Who cares?
It's already no. See if you can convert that.
Yeah.
You and Ryan do a fair amount of JV work. I was looking at y'all's deal board over there. There's a lot of referrals. If someone's out there and wants to get a hold of you because they've got a deal that they might need a little bit of guidance, or it's something that they say, hey, I need some help getting this across the finish line and I'll split you guys in with it, where do they look to find you?
Well, you can either email me. I kind of got off the social medias. So for Lent this year, I'm a Catholic, and for Lent, I gave up social media completely. And it was awesome, to be honest.
Gave up an addiction.
Yeah, it was, man. You just sit there scrolling for 2 or 3 hours, and you're like, what the hell am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
So I gave up Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. And I'll hop back on every once in a while just to see what's going on. But you can still DM me on Facebook. I would probably prefer an email because when I get in the office, first thing I'm checking is my emails with my business account. So
then we're going to put in our comments down here, we'll get your email.
Yeah.
And we'll put that in the contacts. If somebody's got questions, we probably help more than we actually do get in the deal, answer phones, but that also leads to great deals. So we'll take that inbound stuff.
Yeah. Me and Ryan are always willing to take a little time out to help somebody that's going through some problems, or they need something explained, or whatever it needs to be. If we can be a resource for them, then sure. Give me a ring, give me an email.
There you have it. Well, thanks for coming on today, Ben. I enjoyed this.
Yeah, thank you, Logan. I appreciate it.
My commitment to you is to deliver the most interesting, messy, and profitable real estate deals on earth. And in exchange for that, I only ask that you subscribe to this podcast and share it with a friend who can benefit.